For centuries, the island of Britain had lived at the edge of the known world. A land of green fields, burgeoning Christian faith, and fractured kingdoms, its shores had been largely peaceful. But in the late 8th century, a new terror began to stir in the frozen north, a terror that would arrive unannounced from the sea, carried on the waves in dragon-prowed ships. On a summer's day in 793, these ships landed on the holy island of Lindisfarne. They were not traders, they were raiders. They were Vikings, and with fire, steel, and sacrilege, they plunged England into an age of terror. This was not a simple raid. It was the opening blow in a centuries-long struggle for the soul of England itself, a conflict that would shatter kingdoms, create legends, and ultimately forge a new nation from the crucible of war. To understand why England was so vulnerable, we must look at its political landscape. The England of the 8th century did not exist. The land was a patchwork of warring Anglo-Saxon kingdoms known as the Heptarchy. Northumbria and Mercia were the dominant powers, constantly vying for supremacy. Their focus was on land, their conflicts turned inward. Critically, these kingdoms had no standing navies, no professional sea defense. Their shores were open. And who were these invaders? The Vikings were not a single people, but diverse Scandinavian groups, Norsemen, Danes, Swedes, driven from their homelands by overpopulation, political strife, and a thirst for wealth and glory. Their key was a marvel of naval engineering, the longship. Fast, durable, and with a shallow draft, it could cross the open ocean and then navigate far upriver, allowing the Vikings to strike deep into the heart of a kingdom with terrifying speed and surprise. The raid on Lindisfarne was a shock to the Christian world. The Anglo-Saxon scholar, Alcuin of York, wrote, "Never before has such a terror appeared in Britain, as we have now suffered from a pagan race. The heathens poured out the blood of saints around the altar." Lindisfarne was just the beginning. For the next 50 years, the Viking strategy was smash and grab. Summer raids became a terrifying ritual. They were wolves hunting a scattered flock. They targeted the centers of wealth, the monasteries, and the growing trade towns. In 842, they sacked London. In 851, a fleet of 350 ships sailed up the Thames, burning London and Canterbury before being defeated by a West Saxon army. Meanwhile, England's internal divisions played directly into the Vikings' hands. Northumbria, once the great northern kingdom, was consumed by a bloody civil war between two rival claimants to the throne. They were so focused on destroying each other that they failed to see the true threat gathering on the horizon. The age of raiding was about to end. The age of conquest was about to begin. In the autumn of 865, the nature of the war changed forever. A massive Viking force, larger than any previously assembled, landed in East Anglia. The Anglo-Saxon chroniclers called it the Heathen Hare, the Great Heathen Army. This was no raiding party. It was an army of conquest, led by the legendary sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, including the cunning Ivar the Boneless. Their goal was not plunder, but land. They had come to stay. They spent the first winter acquiring horses, transforming themselves into a mobile fighting force. Their first target was the divided kingdom of Northumbria. In 866, they marched north and captured the kingdom's capital, York, with ease. The two warring Northumbrian kings briefly united to try and retake the city, but their assault was a disaster. Both were killed, and the kingdom of Northumbria was extinguished. From this new heartland, the great army swept south. In 869, they conquered East Anglia, capturing and brutally executing its king, Edmund. By 874, the great kingdom of Mercia had also fallen, its king driven into exile. The Heptarchy had crumbled. By 875, only one Anglo-Saxon kingdom remained, one last bastion of resistance against the pagan tide, the kingdom of Wessex. And the king of Wessex was a man unprepared for the role history had thrust upon him. Alfred was a scholar, a man of letters, more at home with books than a sword. He became king in 871, in the midst of the invasion, after his 3 older brothers had all died in battle. He spent the first years of his reign fighting a desperate defense, paying the Vikings to leave, buying precious time. But in the late 870, the Viking army, now led by the powerful warlord Guthrum, launched a surprise attack. They overran Wessex. Alfred's court was scattered, his army defeated. Alfred became a fugitive in his own kingdom, forced to hide in the impassable marshes of Somerset at a place called Athelney. This was the lowest point of the war. Anglo-Saxon England had all but ceased to exist. It is from this period that the famous legend of Alfred and the burning cakes originates, a story of a king so lost in his troubles he neglects his host's baking. While likely a myth, it perfectly captures the desperation of a monarch who had lost everything. But from the depths of the marshes, Alfred began to fight back. He sent out messengers, rallying the loyal men from Somerset, Wiltshire, and Hampshire. He was building a new army for one last desperate gamble. In the spring of 878, Alfred emerged from the wilderness at the head of his new army. He confronted Guthrum's Viking force near a place called Edington. The battle raged for hours, a brutal, grinding contest of 2 shield walls. But Alfred's men, fighting for their homes, their faith, and their very existence, broke the Viking line. They pursued the fleeing Vikings to their fortress at Chippenham and besieged them. After 2 weeks, starving and defeated, Guthrum surrendered. But Alfred's response was not of simple vengeance. It was an act of profound statesmanship. He forced Guthrum and his leading chieftains to accept Christian baptism, with Alfred himself standing as Guthrum's godfather. Then he negotiated a treaty that formally divided England. The north and east of England would be a separate political entity under Viking rule, the Danelaw. The south and west would remain under Alfred's control. The Vikings were no longer just an enemy to be fought, they were now neighbors. Alfred the Great saved his kingdom from annihilation, but his greater legacy was laying the foundation for something that had never existed before, a unified Kingdom of England. It would be his son and grandson who would go on to conquer the Danelaw and fulfill his vision. The Viking invasion was an era of unparalleled violence and destruction. But out of that chaos, through the crucible of war and the vision of a single great king, the fragmented land of the Anglo-Saxons was finally and irrevocably forged into England. What part of the Viking Age do you find most fascinating? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the forging of nations, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.